am very excited about today's lunch. One of these things over these past number of months is obviously sports and entertainment and a lot of industries, but there's been a whole lot of attention placed on sports and entertainment. And certainly, I think it's justifiable. Our society places a lot of value in the ability of sports to bring people together, the ability of sports to unite people, and certainly we need a lot of unity in today's world for a lot of different reasons. When this all started, I'm a history major. Some of you know that, but I don't really know any history. It's like in the back of my mind, it's just rattling around in there. But I remember that at the start of World War II, baseball, the commissioner asked Franklin Roosevelt if baseball should still play in light of all the issues with World War II. And Franklin Roosevelt replied with, I had to look it up because I'm not that smart, but he replied with a letter that became known as the Green Light Letter. And it was that we not only want you to play, we need you to play. We need you to play so that all of our citizens have something to look forward to. We need you to play to bring our people together. We need you to play to rally the American spirit, if you will. And I just thought that was a unique way of looking at things, especially in light of today's circumstances around COVID and everything else. And so, I got to thinking about sports coming back. And I think that there's an opportunity where sports and entertainment is going to play a huge role, not only from an entertainment perspective and giving us a diversion or a family outing, but it could even give us a whole new way to relaunch businesses. I was meeting with Strikes, you guys know the bowling alley here in Frisco, just earlier this week, late last week, and we came up with some different ideas of things that we can do to help reignite his business. And I just think that there's a whole lot of opportunity for sports to play a big role, and we're certainly already active in that endeavor. We don't have to be playing games to do that. And when that got me thinking, I thought of Kern, and I've known Kern for a long time. I won't say the agency that he was with when I first met him, but he is, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, one of the leading sports marketing experts, not in Dallas, but in the world. He's got a presence, he's got brand connections, and I guarantee you that the conversations that he's had over these last 3 months have probably been something that he never thought he'd have to deal with. But I have no doubt that if there's anyone in the sports marketing world that could pivot and find ways for his brands and his properties to be successful, it's a guy like Kern. So frankly, I've got my whole staff on this call. I don't know exactly what he's going to say, but I'm excited to hear his thoughts and feedback. And I know some of you have already submitted questions. If you've got questions, you can put them in the Q&A, or you can put them in the chat, or you can text them to me, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. But feel free to do those things. And then before I forget, because I always forget, when we're all done, there is another Zoom link if you want to get together and do some networking briefly afterwards. And I promise that we will make it fun and energetic, and it'll be the highlight of your week, besides hearing from Kern. So Kern, I'm going to duck out here. You take it away and tell us where the world of sports and marketing is at and how they're intersecting right now.
Great. Thanks, Malcolm. I didn't deserve that introduction, but it's appreciated nonetheless. I'm not originally from Dallas. I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been here 17 years. Married my wife, who's from Austin. We met at the Richards Group, big ad agency that many of you might know. I see somebody's on that actually knows my wife, who used to work at the Wall Street Journal. I'm just very thankful that I'm in this market. I, have been lucky to kind of work around the world and live in some different cities, and I wouldn't choose anywhere else to live. From I say that Dallas-Fort Worth is sort of like at the intersection of like massive size of market and friendliness of a community. I interned at a company called the Indiana Sports Corporation in Indianapolis in college. And Indianapolis was the first city to ever create a civic organization designed to attract sporting events. And they were so successful, the NCAA eventually moved from Overland Park, Kansas to Indianapolis. And that's how successful Indianapolis was in attracting sporting events and putting them on. And I was so struck by the sense of community that that market had. I mean, if you needed anything, somebody was a phone call away. But it's Indianapolis. It's not one of the largest markets in the country, much less the world. Being from Chicago, I saw a huge market, and I saw what could be done and the types of brands and teams and professionals and dollars you could attract in a market that size. But the market was huge, and it felt hard to sort of navigate, and certainly you had professional relationships. But I didn't find it as well connected and as easy to sort of coordinate as some place like Indianapolis. And I find this market to be like the perfect blend of both. It's basically its own, GDP in its size, yet everyone is a phone call away. Malcolm, and I certainly consider you a friend like that. And I think the only reason I have any kind of place in this industry is because of living here and working here. And, just really love it and really, enjoy talking to all of you today. I can't see you, so I'm not sure what the feedback is going to be on what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to try to go quick. It seems like we've got a lively bunch, and I would love for there to be a conversation if we could possibly have it, and happy to direct, this topic in any, particular direction that would work, work best for you. So with that, I think I'm going to share my screen, see if we can get this to work. I greatly apologize for any of the three children you hear in the background, 8, 5, and 3. Very sorry about that. I thought they knew this was going to be important. Can you guys see my my screen? Malcolm, Malcolm, you're
Right now I see a white screen.
you are screen sharing.
I am.
Let's try this. Does that work?
Yes, sports marketing on the rebound. Let's do it.
Okay, so Malcolm said he wouldn't try to say the name of our agency because we recently got bought. I started a sports agency within the Richards Group. I was there for 11 years, and then in 2014 we moved our group from the Richards Group to a large global sports agency called Lagardère. It was a French agency that was recently bought by private equity and rebranded. It's very much a European operation. So Lagardère doesn't mean much to you, I understand, I'm sure. Sport 5, which is our new agency name, I'm sure doesn't mean much to you. It's a brand that was purchased by Lagardère about 10 or 12 years ago with a huge legacy globally. So there's a lot of fanfare as of the last week when we rebranded about this move to Sport 5. But in the US, it doesn't mean a lot other than it's a lot easier for people like Malcolm to spell and to pronounce and hopefully, introduce us a little bit easier. I just have one slide on us so you kind of have an idea of kind of the background. Sport is really representative of all the ways we work in the commercialization of the space, whether it's representing athletes like Khalil Mack and Patrick Peterson in the NFL to golf, John Rahm and Phil Mickelson, 50 PGA Tour players, to 80 to 100 football/soccer clubs in Europe and Asia. There's just about 1,200 of us sort of around the world that kind of work in and around sport and the commercialization, of sport. The 5 represents kind of where we are in the ecosystem: brands, rights holders, media platform, fans, and then of course us. The group that I run is really just works on behalf of brands. So I'm not in charge, or nobody that works with me is in charge of representing any commercial interests other than sponsors and brands. So we work on behalf of large brands like Bridgestone and Citi and MetLife, and also some smaller brands like HEB. HEB is a client we've had for 12 or so years. We're really fortunate to work with such a strong Texas brand. And essentially what we do is we help advise them in and around their interests in sports and entertainment. Agencies like ours get called sports marketing agencies because about 70% of the spend is in sports. But you'll see some spend by brands in culinary, in music, in the arts, and we need to be sort of equipped to help them, no matter what the partnership might look like. But most of the activity, is in sports, and so we'll help brands make decisions in and around where to spend and if they should spend in sports, entertainment, and those partnerships. We'll help them activate it, which is, how do we bring this partnership to life? Hospitality, promotions, digital, experiential marketing. What can we do to make sure that brands are maximizing the investment, with their partner property is what we call it. The legends, would be an example of that. And then to some extent, analytics. So, research and other ways that you might measure and optimize the activity that you're creating out of the investment. So that's a little background on us. I would say that the reason this industry exists and why brands are interested in this space really comes down to a few tenets. The first would be that you have brands that are looking for ways to target a specific audience and engage that audience. And you either anecdotally or with research understand what the passion points, what the interests are of your key customer, your key client, your key consumer, depending on how you would define it. And you'd say, is there a way that I could play in that space of their interests and their passion to sort of target them, engage with them, and become more relevant and visible, in their lives? You also explain a competitive advantage. So to the extent that you have exclusivity, you may partner with a property because it keeps your competitors out. It creates white space for you. Another reason you would create a partnership or be interested in sports marketing is the activation platform that it creates. Essentially, what you have in sort of the media marketing ecosystem for brands is you have touch points or communication channels, depending on the vocabulary. You have your advertising, you have your media, you have your website, you have your hospitality, you have your CRM system, you have your experiential marketing. Down the list of all the creative elements and touch points where brands and companies try to, have commercial success with their clients or customers. What sports marketing and sponsorships does that's really unique in that ecosystem is it's really not its own individual touch point. What it is a platform, and that platform is made up of all the touch points where the partnership sort of creates the right creative opportunities or media opportunities to bring all those touch points to life. And so it's really unique in that it's not exclusive of other touch points. You don't have companies that are necessarily arguing about, do I have dollars in media or digital or somewhere else? You could say, well, we've identified a partnership that we think can really help us engage with our key customer, client, consumer, et cetera. And oh, by the way, all those touch points are still available to us. Our digital and social team, you still have relevancy. You just need to help us work with this partnership. And by the way, this partnership will give you more engagement tools. It'll give you more reasons for our audience to care about what we have to say in digital and social versus being exclusive from a digital and social strategy. And then the last thing I'd say in terms of tenants would be the ability to sort of measure the return on your investment or your objective. When you are sponsoring the Texas Legends, you know who you are reaching. You have defined an audience. And to the extent that you can segment that audience from your general audience or even a more general targeted audience, what you want to see is lifts. You want to see lifts in your purchase funnel, your brand funnel, in brand equities, in a particular KPI that you might have assigned to this investment, say, email signups. There's all different ways that you can rationalize why you're in this partnership. And once you've done that, now you've kind of set yourself up to how to measure the investment. And because you've defined that audience so well that you're reaching, it really helps you measure the success or where you can improve against that investment. So with that said, that's kind of the backdrop for me on why we have a business and why I have a job and why brands big and small are oftentimes finding themselves in this space. I get to speak to MBAs once in a while, and I go through all the touch points and ask if they've had classes on those touch points or experience with those touch points. And they raise their hand on all of them except for sports and entertainment marketing. It still feels in academia like it's a nice to have, like it's a chairman's choice, like it's just for tickets. And the reality is that just about every major brand in the world has this element as part of their marketing mix. And brand managers that go on to these companies who all go on to be CMOs or executives need to understand the acumen that needs to go behind these investments, because it's not just about tickets. The idea is this is helping build your brand and your business just like any other investment you might make. So with that said, Malcolm, you definitely set it up right. We are in uncharted territory. I've been as busy as ever. Our activation business has really struggled. Our events business has obviously really struggled. But our consulting business, that business that we have, which is really sitting next to brands and helping them navigate these turbulent times, that business has been, growing and as busy as ever in these last three or so months. We're lucky to have a research and insights team. They've given me some bullet points that we really share with a lot of our clients, and I thought I'd run through those with you now. The first one is essentially this idea that the virtual presence has gone from a novelty or a luxury to a necessity. Example of that would be obviously, we're on Zooms today versus what you might usually do in person. I'm sure all of you guys are feeling this in your regular business and personal lives. But, I can tell you that our events business has moved totally virtually and had to build tools from scratch, build software from scratch. And so what we're finding is, this immediate breakdown of that barrier on engagement, from it having to be physical to it being able to be possible. And, this idea, if I can do it online, I will. And this is just a lot of these offline to online trends. They've been in place for a while. You know what they are, but this has just accelerated them. And just like it's accelerated, I'm sure, a lot of your lives individually, it's no different in our industry. And I think brands are really asking themselves, we've always sold we've always sold the system on this one-to-one engagement, that personal touch. But society has shifted so dramatically that, can we get the same result out of our virtual experiences? We need to be where our consumers and our customers are. And obviously they're dealing in a virtual environment. And so you're really trying to help brands, try to shift from that physical world to that virtual and digital world, knowing we still have a foot in the physical world. We can't wait for sports to get back. When sports do get back, it's going to be probably as exciting as ever. Certainly first on TV and in media, but then eventually in physical spaces. So it's not like there's a move completely from physical, but this has accelerated a trend, which I think is only going to, force brands to be rethinking exactly how they engage fans. Let's see. So next, this might sound cliche, but it's as important as ever. You have got to be authentic in your activity. I think this is especially interesting in the world of sports and partnerships, where companies and brands very quickly want to be in the cool kids club. They want to immediately just fit in as a sports marketer, as a brand that sort of deserves to be there because a check was written. And that's a mistake, because that's a partnership. That's not an advertising buy. And you need to be bringing your own value to the equation, to the formula. We have this saying where if you add value to the fan, that allows you to add value to the brand and then add value to the business. You do not want to leap from, nothing in the space to add value to my business. That has to go through a flow where you're adding value to the experience. You're adding value to your team partner. You're adding value to the fan. And you need to do that authentically. What can you do as a company to make yourself unique in that sponsor ecosystem? And you'll get much more value and much more return out of that than just asking, what can this do for me? And rely on your team partner, rely on your property partners. We oftentimes make a brand create a brief. What is the brief for this partnership? What are you looking to accomplish? And that's, when we work with creatives, we sometimes struggle with them, because creative people are used to having a brand brief. They're used to a company saying, I want to accomplish X. Go help me develop an advertising campaign or some other types of campaign that's going to help me accomplish X. But in sports marketing or in a partnership, you have a third party there who is very essential to the success of your investment. And you have a shared objective in trying to create the best experience for the fans. So how can you work together as two parties to make 1 + 1 = 3? And it's really important to bring your own sense of value, your own authenticity. Whatever it is unique you bring to the table should absolutely be a common thread in whatever you're doing with the team. And here's some data points to kind of support that. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear things that I like, I take screenshots of slides or of data to use for other purposes. So I thought maybe some of these stats or facts and figures, might be helpful. But it's certainly COVID. I talked in very general terms about authenticity. Again, much like moving from the physical to digital world, this has only accelerated the need for authenticity, at this time. Let's see. Here we go. So third, the role of influencers, the displacement of live sports entertainment audiences from TV and traditional channels to consume their favorite sports has really shifted to that power of the athlete and in influencer social accounts. Certainly that would apply for teams who do very well in social, where they can kind of serve as their own influencer platform. You're seeing the deconstruction of the media ecosystem before our eyes when it comes to social. And the athletes have more power than ever. Certainly teams that use social well have more influence than ever. And you're really just seeing an acceleration, like the other two topics I brought up, into brands just saying, wow, if I can't reach people in traditional ways, how can I? And you used to have to go through traditional means to get to an athlete, but now athletes and influencers are their own media accounts. With the name and likeness reform that's happening in the NCAA, kind of scary for me to think about college kids now being influencers and brands paying them. I don't certainly think that will be something that big brands embrace right away. But for brands that need to engage with younger audiences, what they've always struggled is how can they make younger people influencers or spokespeople for their brands. And you certainly couldn't do that with college athletes, but that's changing. And I think I like this term supercharged. I think that's probably a really accurate way to talk about how things have shifted dramatically to social. You can see again some facts and figures, here. Just like you would partner with the legends and partnering with an athlete, you just get immediate permission to have someone care. I've sat in a lot of meetings, just fine tuning messaging, for this company, for this brand to just get something exactly perfect into the the fan atmosphere. And you really underestimate how much that fan would actually care. You've got to give them an excuse for your messaging and what you're trying to accomplish as a brand and business to care about that. And obviously affiliating with passion points, celebrities, athletes, the teams that employ them is a really great way to do that. And again, mentioned some data, some stats here, at the bottom. Fourth, I only have 5 bullets, so just bear with me. We've talked about how much the world has changed with no sports, but we also need to talk about what's going to change when sports comes back. I think in everybody that we speak with, if everything falls the way we want it to, we are in for an unprecedented second half of the year of sports. And I think you're going to see some of the innovation that's become necessary, out of the change in our environment, kind of live on through when you see these sports, sort of come back. Again, here's some examples. I'm sure many of you know the NFL draft, what they, attempted to do between raising money for COVID, how they brought fans onto the TV screens of Roger Goodell in his basement. I mean, just things that were completely unthinkable. I saw a PDF yesterday from Major League Baseball on all of the virtual advertising signage that they're going to make available that is completely unique and new. And the question is, what's going to live on? What's coming out of a requirement for revenue in light of a different atmosphere, and what innovation will live on that comes, that comes from that. And I'm sure the Legends, just like other teams, have been thinking through that. And I think the major reason to talk about this is, what is the role that the sponsor can play in that innovation, in that new inventory, in that new way to engage fans? And again, goes back to your authenticity. And you want to hope that the Legends and any of your sports partners, that they're thinking the same way. They're not, that they don't just need to sell new inventory. They're talking to their sponsors that are most relevant, for that engagement touch point. And if they're not, or if the communication isn't consistent, then take the initiative on your own as a brand. What's happening? What's new? How are you thinking about engaging the fan in this new world? Where can we play an authentic role? And then last, the digital virtual components be critical to the production of live events and experiences. There's just been such a shift to digital, which we all know. I think what's been a surprise is the lack of adoption of virtual and augmented reality. I had a very smart creative friend tell me, I don't know, probably a year and a half ago, I think it was at South by, and he said, the problem with virtual reality in sports is that virtual reality is very much an individual experience, while sports is very much a communal experience. And the technology, it has not been there yet to transfer that tribal, that communal feel in sports to the virtual world. It's getting there. I've seen a couple of demos recently, but watching it in a stadium with your friends and family, or at home, or at a bar or restaurant with people that you're closest with, is a drastically different experience than watching with a headset on. And, it's going to get there, I have to believe, but, it's certainly been slower than what we thought. But I think we can expect that will become even more sophisticated in imitating the physical world, and brands need to be prepared for that sort of engagement. And, here are a few examples. I mentioned Roger Goodell, some of the things that happened there. I mean, just some things that are unthinkable, right? 6 months ago, would you ever think you'd be in Roger Goodell's basement? You're going to see, Next VR and some other VR companies, you're going to find them as bigger integrations into what would traditionally be your normal traditional media world. Holograms, esports. I'm sure many of you guys ask, quite a few questions about esports, or look into it, quite a bit. I mean, innovation is really coming, a lot is coming from there. Fortnite, other examples of just this virtual world space. And I think it'll be a combination of two things. One is the adoption and evolution and sophistication of the technology. And it'll also come from a rising generation of fans who have the expectation that this is what their world is like, versus it being something new for old people like me. Holograms, I'm a mentor for Berkeley's Skydeck VC program. And I saw a hologram technology, which is basically live streamed. I mean, everyone knows holograms as, hey, go into a studio, use a bunch of cool cameras, record something, and then pop that up on a stage or in a virtual environment. Well, they are now able to basically live stream, and we're not too far away from. And Malcolm's such a good-looking guy and such an incredible camera presence. I'm sure he'll be one of the earliest adopters, where you will be able to see Malcolm completely, in your office or in your living room. I know that's a scary thought for some of you, but we're going to move from a physical world to very much this virtual one, and technology is only going to continue to accelerate that. And with that, I think I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions or any kind of discussion, Malcolm, that you want to lead.
Absolutely, Kern. There's been a number of questions, and for everyone involved here, let me get the chat back on my screen here. And so I'm going to bounce around a little bit in terms of where that is. And starting with one here, Kern, how would you advise your clients to blend both their marketing interests and the diversity side of things as they integrate their brand and their company culture into some of these campaigns?
Well, it goes back to authenticity first. That's got to be in your value system. as a company. Otherwise, it's an advertising play. And fans are going to see right through that, especially with the diversity inclusion initiatives. I think an interesting element of what we've seen happen in our society in the last few weeks is moving from teams smartly segmenting their audience, and allowing brands to target specific, segments of their audience, whether that be African American, whether that be Hispanic, et cetera. You see that big in the NBA. There's probably no better property and league than the NBA, when it comes to diversity initiatives. And brands have been quick to jump on that. Which part of that activity, quote unquote, can I be a part of to fulfill sort of a moral or commercial obligation that I might have around diversity and inclusion? Well, what if that just moves to something that's automatic? What if that's just part of what everybody does every day? What if we're celebrating heritage and celebrating diversity as part of just what we do in approaching, our sports and, the athletes that play in it, the fans, and that sponsors play, like I said, a very authentic role in that. So I'm interested in how this is going to move from a check the box scenario, where a brand says, hey, I've got 20% of my customers are Hispanic, so I want to sponsor the Hispanic Heritage Night. Not because it's not meaningful, whatsoever, but that was sort of what was available to them. But how does it move towards that's just a common element and a common thread for everybody's activity and purpose throughout these partnerships? I'm excited to see where that goes and think sports can lead the way in really improving the way we approach that topic and making society better, which I think, we've all seen, is sorely needed.
Kern, this is getting to a little bit better understanding of both your role and as well as how corporations will utilize different platforms they have. When you talk about a brand like HEB, do you represent their marketing initiatives only in sports across all? And assuming it's only in sports, and that's, how do they go about doing? Are there agencies that do the rest of that marketing campaign?
Yeah, so we met them through the Richards Group, and Richards Group is still their creative agency. So what you see is such a great brand in HEB certainly has a lot to do with their culture. I mean, where I grew up north, grocery brands had no equity whatsoever. No one cared about Jewel or Dominic's or whatever was down the street is where you went. And I moved here and I just couldn't believe that people were so loyal to a grocery store. My wife's first job in high school was at an HEB, and it just really didn't compute with me. And so much of their success as a brand is due to their culture and how that business has been built. But I think Richards Group deserves a lot of credit for the way they've creatively, been a manifestation of how great that brand has been. And our job is not to be the advertising agency. It's not to be the media buying agency. It's not to be the Hispanic agency. What our job is to help brands become as relevant and visible as they can in culture. Of course, sometimes brands just have a really specific call to action. Like, hey, look, I get it. I'd love to be my brand to have more equity, but I just have a commercial objective I've got to achieve. And somebody's got to show me an ROI on direct mail. It's okay. Good. I respect and understand the position of those businesses. But for those that are bigger or have bigger aspirations, you've got to create some equity in your brand. Your brand has to mean something. And certainly a creative agency can really do a lot to help you connect with consumers. Where we play is to say, well, where are you going to put it? Where are you going to put your brand? Where are you going to place your brand and have a conversation with people where they're going to care? I mean, people are busy. Brands underestimate how busy people are and how little disposable share of mind that they have. And so you've got to create a relevant connection before you can expect them to start caring about actually, even considering your brand, much less buying it. And so our role, and with HEB specifically and almost all of our clients, is to really play in that lane of helping them become as culturally relevant as possible by identifying the right partnerships and activating the right partnerships. But some of that means we are working with their other agencies to help make them better. So if HEB is sponsoring the Houston Texans, how can we make the Richards Group as smart as possible about the Houston Texans and their fan base? to make the creative as relevant, as interesting as possible when it comes to Houston Texans, advertising. I'm just giving you an anecdote there, but the idea is where we try to play is get in the right space, be in that right space the right way. And if you have other partners, our job isn't to run over those partners. If they're very good partners of yours, let them own what they're good at and let us help them be even better within that cultural, marketing opportunity that we've created. I think the last thing I would just say about this, that's our biggest competition is not using an agency at all. We find a lot of companies like to do their own buys in sports because it's cool, because it's exciting, because they want to write the check, because they want to be, the person that is known for being the one that wrote the check. And there's very little accountability on the expense. If you are buying digital, there's rate cards, there's benchmarks, there are all kinds of ways to know whether you got your value, out of a digital or a traditional media buy. And you want that third-party validity and air cover on doing that. In sports, if you do a partnership, there's not a lot of people out there that are going to be able to tell you whether that was a good investment or not. And so an example I use is I've been involved in like $4 billion in transactions in my career, which tells you how old I am. If I went to a client tomorrow, I would get some third-party help in buying a partnership, because I would want the communication flow and the deal flow from a party that's been across categories to know what works, what doesn't, what relevant price points are. And it's not always just about getting the cheapest deal. I'm sorry, Malcolm, because I know, it's sometimes about paying, the right amount of money, but it's also just paying for the right things. And if you pay for the right things, if you construct those assets and that partnership the right way, it's going to have a much higher chance of success. And that comes back to help your team partner, because it's much more likely that you're going to be a long-term partner rather than a one and done. And so the value proposition isn't hire an agency and save money. The value proposition is, can we help you spend the right amount of money, but can we help you spend it in the right places? And that's usually why we're in business.
First of all, I want to apologize. There's no way we're going to get to all the questions. So there's a couple more just bouncing around here. Kern, how long would you expect or tell one of your clients how long of a marketing investment, how long do you expect that to begin to show some results, be that from a brand standpoint, from an ROI standpoint? How much time do you need to give it?
That's a great question. 3 to 5 years minimum. It doesn't mean that you can't get a return in year one, but to really assess whether the partnership is working, you need to have at least 3 years, if not 5. And one of the reasons, and I know on a local level, you'll see many more one-year deals than you will sort of on a national level. And so I don't want to say that a one-year deal, I would never say don't do a one-year deal. I would just say you need more time to really fully assess the value for 2 reasons. One is you need time to build equity up with the fan base, and they're not going to get everything that you're saying to them in the first year. And the second reason is because you need to learn, what worked in the first year. How can you leverage the learnings from year one into year 2 to make year 2 even better, and then year 3. And then the last thing I'd say, and again, that the renewal windows are shorter, on smaller local deals than they are in bigger national deals. But in some instances, you have to make a decision on a 3-year deal a year and a half into your deal, because you might have a renewal window that's 18 months before your deal's up. And so you sign this deal for 3 years and everybody just thinks, oh man, that's a relief. Let's get going. We got 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. You're 18 months in, you're 2 years in, before you even know it when it comes to budget planning and fiscal year, scenarios where before you know it, you need to make a decision on whether to renew. And, it doesn't give you as much time as you'd like to, build up the proper equity in the fan base. We have clients that say 10 to 15 years on national deals. We have one client, the CEO last week said, how long have we been in this property? Oh, about 12 years. Great. We've been in it 12 years. We got a lot of momentum and equity. Now, where do we take this in years 12 to 15 plus? So it can really vary, but, I'd say 3 to 5.
Again, I apologize for bouncing around here. Kern, and this is brainstorming for folks, right? Just, ideas. a product like a Dr. Pepper or a Bud, products that are being served in venues, and what sorts of ways have you guys brainstormed around pivoting with those kinds of products where they're over the past number of months and have lost the platform of the actual event at which to serve their products?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we work with Red Bull locally, and as Malcolm, you've seen the brief Can in Hand.
Yep.
Brands like that, they will have varying marketing objectives. So it's not their only one, but the one edict we had locally is, Can in Hand. And if people aren't gathering, how are you going to put cans in their hands? I think it's been a 6-month huge pivot to digital and influencer marketing, in and around social. Use the opportunity to be, as engaging as you can and as much of a conversation as you can. Use the time to build up some goodwill and some equity. Add value to them while they're struggling to find, places to spend their time, given their favorite sport has been taken offline. Use it to have that conversation so that when you do get back to Can in Hand or, other kind of product sampling or experiential scenarios, they're even more predisposed than they were before. But yeah, it's tough for those that really rely on experiential marketing. There's no doubt.
Last question. I know there are others out there, and again, my apologies. Kern, in your presentation, I think it was Major League Baseball you referenced for the question, that you'd seen a document of ideas of things that they were going to try here during a no fan stage, and who knows what'll live on. Are there any of those ideas that have really resonated with you that you can share here?
I would tell you that the first comment that I got from our leadership team was more about the value lost from traditional sponsors than it was value gained from new and innovative sponsors. We're in a 24-hour window from when this is rolled out. So it's not like there's been a huge, point of view put together. But, so Budweiser was famous for a couple of years ago saying, we don't want to buy signs anymore. Everybody knows who Budweiser is. So why do we need the brand awareness? If you look at a funnel, you say, look, I want them to be aware of my brand. I want them to be familiar with my brand, what it stands for. I want them to consider my brand. That I want them to use my brand and hopefully be loyal to my brand, and that kind of traditional brand funnel. And at the awareness level, you say, well, Budweiser doesn't need brand awareness. But our studies find that the more aware a fan is of your relationship with their favorite team, the more likely it is they're going to be receptive to all the other messaging that goes to the funnel. So even if you might say, look, I just need to get people at the bottom of the funnel. I need them using my product, using my company, being loyal. And you don't need the top of the funnel more awareness and familiarity because you might be a more established brand. Great. Just know that in that isolated, space and that segmented fan audience, you are going to have more effective lower funnel activities if you're stronger in the upper funnel. Not just about whether they're aware of your brand. It's, are they aware that you are an endemic, an authentic and organic and meaningful partner, of their team. And that's what I think I'm going to be really interested to see what brands do in this space, whether they're going to say, we don't need the awareness, so we don't buy signs. If we need TV inventory, we'll buy commercials because we don't need our logo, in a virtual environment. Or you might see them say, geez, we just need visibility. So great. Thank you for giving us that new inventory. Or I think you'll have brands that are smart, and if they've done research, they'll already know what I've said, which is, use that new inventory as a way to reinforce your relationship with the team in a way that you probably wasn't available to you before. But don't let that be the end of your investment. Use it to make the rest of your activity more relevant.
Kern, thanks for joining us. There's been a couple requests. Is it okay? Could you share with us that PDF, and can we distribute that? That'd be fantastic. If so, if you could send that to me, we will distribute it. One of my takeaways here from your talk is that this period of time, these past few months, I think has really forced properties and brands to accept, and this is something that I think the Legends frankly tried to do for a long time, but that a contract is just a piece of paper, and the words on a contract, if you stick to what it says, especially in this window of time, you can't even do those things. And more important than the contract is the relationship, and is the ability to, change and evolve quickly without necessarily having to go do a whole new contract. Something that folks have heard me say before is the words on the paper are great, but more important is the unspoken things on a piece of paper, the things you're gonna add later on. And I think brands have to be aware of that, as do properties, in order to be successful. You can't just marry yourself to what the piece of paper says and never change it.
Yeah, I mean, sponsorship marketing is what's mostly used in our space, as you know, Malcolm. But it's really partnership marketing, and it's not just a term to use to try to sell more sponsorships. It's unlike almost any other media or advertising or marketing buy you would do. You cannot succeed without the help and the collaboration of the other side, of that partner. That's what a true partnership is. And I would just say one last thing, Malcolm, as you know, with our nonprofit, Dallas Influencers in Sports Entertainment, you've been supportive of that, and we appreciate it. I want to get, this market has given so much to me. I basically almost had nothing when I came here 17, 18 years ago. And as you know, Malcolm, a lot of the people in that organization are people that sort of helped me. And I'm always looking for ways to help and get back. So if you want to give my contact information, anybody, if they have a question or if there's a behind the scenes anecdote or statistic or anything that we can help with, I'd love to help your partners. So feel free to share that.
Everyone's got my contact info. Reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you with Kern as needed. So Kern, thanks again for your time. Folks, just a quick reminder, if you do want to join us for some brief, fun networking, the link, I think, is there in the chat, and just copy and paste that, and away we'll go. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see some of you shortly.